Hey nappers, Beck is away on holidays with her family for the next few weeks, so I'm doing something a bit different while she's gone. I've invited 4 incredible women to have real conversations with me about topics that intersect with baby sleep. I'm calling it Meet the Village. Today's conversation is about the safe introduction of solids for your baby with paramedic and mum Eliza from Baby Safe Basics. All right, let's get into it. Welcome back, Nap Trappers, and a big hello to our first ever lovely, amazing guest, Eliza from Baby Safe Basics. Hi, Eliza.
Hi, Sal. Thanks for having me.
This is a real treat. As many listeners will know, Beck, my lovely Nap Trapped co-host, is off in Thailand on a very well-deserved family holiday. And instead of hitting pause on the podcast, I thought I'd try out a little mini-series and extend the virtual village. And we are so lucky that that includes you, Eliza, because today we're going to talk all about the safe introduction of solids, which... I now have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, so it's kind of a thing of the past. But I do know I have even messaged you on Instagram, like in the last 2 years, saying, how do I serve steak?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about it today because so many of our listeners have young babies and would be coming up to starting solids. And I want to help them feel empowered and excited rather than scared because of social media.
Yeah, totally. Love that. That's what I'm all about.
Excellent. So for anyone that doesn't know you, do you want to give a quick introduction on who you are, what your background is, and how you got into this space?
Yeah, so I am a mum of 1 toddler and pregnant at the moment.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I live in Melbourne. I am a paramedic in Melbourne. I've been doing that for nearly 9 years now. And in the first year postpartum, when I started introducing solids with my own son around that, like when he was around 6 months of age, I stupidly came up with this idea to start my own business that was first aid education for parents, based around babies. That's like my target is around the baby area. And specifically around starting solids, because I saw that through my own experiences and chatting with other friends and mums in my parents group, that this was like the number one fear for parents was around starting solids and choking and gagging and all those sorts of things. And I personally just didn't experience those fears. So I was like, well, if I'm not experiencing it, I know that that's so possible for everyone else. It's probably just like we need a little bit of education around it and a little bit of reassurance around it, and no fear-mongering around introducing solids and choking and that sort of thing. So that's where this whole idea of Baby Safe Basics came from. And so, yeah, I've just clocked over doing 2 years of that, which is fun. And it's just gone so fast,
goodness.
but I love it.
I love that because you and me both, we find that what we should be like just enjoying our postpartum, and our busy brains are like, do you know what? I might start a business and just add to the mental load.
Oh,
and
my
yet
God,
it's just who we are.
I know. It's just like you can't just ever relax and you're just constantly like, how can I help other people? Like, I feel like, yeah, so many people are like that, especially mums. Like, mums just have that ingrained in them that they just want to give. And that was just where it all came from. So, yeah. But no regrets.
Absolutely.
I love it.
I think especially when you see misinformation and fear, as you were talking about, because I even see it in the baby sleep, in my parents group, the WhatsApp group chat, when we hit the 4-month sleep regression and all of these things. And I'm like, oh, there's things, but you don't necessarily want to intervene, but you're like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. So I love that you are joining the misinformation busters side of social media and education. It's amazing.
Totally. Like, being a first-time parent is just overwhelming in itself. You don't need to add to that. We're already doubting everything we're doing anyways.
No. And, the introduction of solids is such a noisy space. I think, why don't we just start off with the basics? When is the right time to introduce solids? Because I just heard you talking about starting at 6 months. I personally started at 5 months with both of my babies. Is there a hard and fast rule for parents that are listening?
Yeah, the hard and fast rule around like when to start solids and what the ideal age is when your baby is developmentally ready, when they're showing all those developmental signs that they are able to sit upright in either a high chair or sitting on your lap. Their head and neck is supported to be up upright like this, they're not bobbly head anymore. That's like the number one key sign that we want to see for babies. And most babies will hit that developmental sign around that 6-month mark. But it can be for some babies a lot earlier, like your child was 5 months. My son was closer to 6 months. Some can be, as early as 4.5 months. But, there's lots of talk about I'm finding it really difficult to eat in front of my baby. Like they're constantly wanting to reach at my food. They're getting really upset that I'm not
Grab
giving
the
them any
food.
food. Yeah, like that on its own, being interested in food is not a good enough reason to start solids. We need to make sure it's safe. That's what we are aiming for. We're setting them up for a lifetime of safe eating. So to be able to start solids, we really want to make sure they're showing those developmental signs.
And is that from an airway safety perspective, the lack of the bobble head, or is it a mouth strength chewing swallow thing? What is that about?
It's to protect their airway so that when they're swallowing, if their head is in a bobble position and it does go down that wrong hole that could cause a choking episode, it's going to be very difficult for the body to try and clear and protect its own airway by coughing, gagging, spluttering if their head is bobbled and their airway is not in a nice open lengthened position where it would be when their head and neck is supported upright.
And in terms of choking, I mean, I think that's, for me, that would have been my biggest fear. Do you find that is the biggest fear factor for parents before they start the solids journey?
Yeah, a fear of choking, definitely for sure. That's like the number one thing. And like whenever anyone books in a workshop with me, runs a first aid workshop, they say my biggest fear around, is around choking and introducing solids. So that would be the first biggest fear. And then the second thing that comes with introducing solids, you're also introducing your allergens as well. So allergic reactions and anaphylaxis, that's the second most common fear that I find amongst parents, which is a really fair enough fear. Like it's a scary thing.
Oh, it's really vulnerable. I mean, we're talking about your most precious possession, and particularly if you are a first-time parent, it can feel really daunting. And because I also found, at least with my first, I initially found it tricky to distinguish between what was gagging and what was choking. And is there a way that parents can determine between the two? Like, how common is actual choking? And I see you talk about this on social media all the time. How common is it, and what is it versus gagging? And is gagging in and of itself normal?
We'll start off with talking about gagging because that is a totally normal thing. It's like part of their discovering food. It's part of their learning to eat, is that their gag reflex is really, really strong and sensitive when they first have foods. And it's deliberately designed like that to teach them that, you can't pick up a big chunk of food and try and swallow it. I'm going to give you that. I'm going to trigger your gag reflex. I'm going to give you that really awful feeling where
when their eyes are bigger than their stomach.
Exactly. And, their eyes go really watery, their mouth is open, they're making lots of like retching, gagging sounds, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It sends a message to their brain that, okay, don't do that. Don't pick up that big chunk of food and just try and swallow it. Or, don't put your spoon all the way. Yeah. Don't put your spoon all the way at the back of your mouth because you're going to gag on it. It's going to be really uncomfortable for you. And the hope is that they will learn that reflex is really, really not comfortable for them. So they're going to do less of it, which is encouraging them to move food around in their mouth before they try and swallow it, chew it down, break it down into a size that is safe for them to swallow before actually trying to swallow, to try and avoid that gag reflex from being triggered. So gagging is really, really common, especially when little ones start solids. It's not uncommon that before your baby even starts solids, you'll see them gagging on things just like their hands or their toys or Sophie the giraffe.
Mine were thumb suckers, and they would,
they
would gag on their own thumb. I was like, you put that in, not me. Like, that's part of your body.
I know, but they give you that look that's like, why did you do that to me?
Yeah, how dare you get this out? I'm like, you're in control.
You are doing this to yourself. But it's also like a really good thing as well that like if you see your baby gag before you start having solids, so you encourage them to put things in their mouth, you give them teething toys, silicone spoons, all those sorts of things, you're going to be really confident knowing what a gagging episode looks like for them when they do start eating food. So you're going to be like, oh, this is just gagging. I've seen this before. This is not them having a choking episode, which is something to be, it can be quite reassuring for parents when they go and start and introduce foods they're already really comfortable knowing what their baby looks like when they have a gagging episode. So gagging, really, really obvious, really, really noisy. They make, their mouth is open wide. They're making those watery eyes. They're making all those big sounds trying to get the whatever it is that they've gagged on out of their mouth. And the thing that I say that's how to distinguish between what's gagging and what's choking is that a baby gagging, they might seem a little bit distressed, but in their face, they're not looking panicked. So because they are still able to breathe through a gagging episode. And most kids that have a gagging episode, they'll spit it out onto their high chair and then they'll pick it straight back up and put it into their mouth, like totally unfazed by a gagging episode.
So that's exactly, that is what helped me figure it out over, the first few weeks and months, is that I think for me, I would hear it and see it and think, oh my goodness, it's happening. And then this baby would just stuff more food in their mouth. I'm like, okay, you can't be struggling here. First of all, we're basically Labradors in my family. Like we don't know how to pace ourselves. But I was like, oh no, I think this is a thing for me, not for you as the baby.
Don't get me wrong. Like, even though we say gagging is a totally normal thing and like it's part of them learning to eat safely, all those sorts of things, it is really hard in the first couple of times when your baby has gagging episodes to just sit there and be like, yeah, cool, everything's fine. Like it does take a lot of trust, it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of patience trusting that they are going to figure this out. This is something that their body needs to do to teach them this important lesson, and it's something that they're trying to do to protect them from having a choking episode. So when we compare that to choking is not a common thing. And because that gag reflex is really, really strong, our young babies starting solids, they're actually not the highest risk of choking because they have that really dominant gag reflex to protect them from choking. So whatever you do when you introduce solids, whether you do purees, you do baby-led weaning, or you do a combination of both, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as you're correctly preparing the food safely for where they're at developmentally. If they put a big chunk of food at the back of their mouth, that gag reflex is going to be triggered and it's going to be really, really strong.
Okay. So it almost overcorrects in those early ages and stages versus an older child. The body is there to say, I know that this is something new that's going to happen, so let me really work to protect this airway and teach these important skills.
Yeah, because that gag reflex sits really close to the front of their mouth when they're really, really young, and then it moves to the back of their throat where ours would sit now. So it's quite difficult for us to have a gagging episode. But with that being said, we take a lot of care with our really young babies when we're introducing solids to them because they have not been eating for as long as we have, or older kids have been eating. So they're really underdeveloped chewers. They don't have those really strong muscles to be able to break down food really well. So that's why they've got that really strong gag reflex, but we also take lots of care and we try and teach them how to be really safe eaters.
Then what is choking?
So the easiest way I can try and explain it, so in your throat here, you've got essentially like two pathways. So one is your esophagus. That's where everything we eat and drink goes down through our esophagus and down through our stomach. That's where naturally the body, everything will go when we swallow something. And then you have your airway or your windpipe, and that's where we breathe through, and that heads down into our lungs. So everyone would have experienced, sculling water or talking with a mouthful of food and something goes down the wrong hole. That's where something has gone down into your windpipe. It's gone down into your airway, your body. Its natural reflex when something goes down into the airway is it doesn't like it to be there. And that's when we say like, you make that massive scene and cough, splutter, gag, all those sorts of things to try and get it out. And then afterwards you're like, oh, it just went down the wrong hole. That's because it did go down the wrong hole. It went down into your airway and your body has done the right thing to try and get it out. It just becomes a choking episode if it goes down into that wrong hole, and before your body has the opportunity to try and cough to get it out, it's actually blocking the flow of air. So it might be a little bit blocking it, where we say is a partial obstruction, where a little bit of air can still pass up through the obstruction, or it'll be fully obstructing it where no air is passing down and out of the lungs. And that's where obviously we need to intervene with our first aid.
Before we keep going, we know not every episode will match exactly where you're at right now. That's intentional. Nap Trapped is built to grow with you from newborn sleep all the way through toddler transitions. Visit naptrappedpodcast.com to browse episodes by age or topic so you can find exactly what you need today and bookmark what's coming next. And subscribe so new episodes land in your feed every week. How could a parent, so if they know about gagging, they see gagging, how do you what are the signs to watch in your baby to think, oh, I think this may actually be closer to a choking episode or heading in that direction? Do they look different? Is there a change of colour? What happens to indicate to a parent like, oh, hang on, this is different?
So it can be a couple of things. So that first thing I spoke about with gagging, like they're looking totally unfazed in their face. Somebody who is having a choking episode, like I've seen it, and it's just like a look of utter panic in somebody's eyes. They look at you with eyes like dinner plates. And, even a young baby is going to give you that reaction that if they can't breathe, they know there's something stuck in their airway, they're going to look at you incredibly panicked. And it's going to be a look that you would have never seen before. And you're just going to know straight away, like, holy crap, I need to pick them up and I need to start doing first aid on them. So depending on what level of choking, whether it's a complete or a partial obstruction. But really the biggest indicator of, aside from like the look of utter panic, would indicate that they're choking, but also how they are sounding. So we talk about like a really loud cough or really loud retching sounds. Like they're more indicative that somebody is having a gagging episode, whereas you're choking, a partial obstruction is that they're still able to cough. They're looking panicked, but they're still able to make a really loud cough. Or your complete obstruction where they need some help very quickly from you is when they don't have a really strong cough, like they were sick, or they're not making any sounds at all. And then we start to see later on, like we start to see changes in their the color in their skin. If they're really like something is really lodged in their airway and they're struggling to breathe, that's where they can that's when they can make great changes in the color. But the first things I say to look for is look for a look of utter panic and listen to how they sound and how much sound they're actually able to make.
I actually had a sense of panic for myself a couple of months ago because I was eating a toasted focaccia and it had a prosciutto in it. And I was chatting to my husband was talking to me, and all of a sudden I thought, I can't concentrate on what he's saying. I think the prosciutto is a bit stuck in my throat. But I was like, no, like, when you're trying to get it out or move it around. And then I took a breath through my nose and I realized I struggled to do that. And I thought, I'm gonna die at Chadstone. I'm gonna choke and die at Chadstone if I don't do something. But I had that thought of, oh no, I'm struggling to actually breathe here through my mouth and my nose. And I probably did the wrong thing, which I always know you're not meant to scoop what's in your baby's mouth out. But no one needs this visual, but I actually pulled the prosciutto out and my husband was just staring. And then I was like, no, I was about to die. You just didn't know it.
Did he know it? Did he look and see your face and be like he knew something was wrong though?
No, but I think retrospectively he was like, you weren't very quiet and that's not like me. I can clearly chat, but I know that I could not concentrate on anything but what was going in and out of my airway. So and I'm at the ripe age of 36.
When I say that like choking is not a common thing that we see in kids, I have been to so many adults choking. Like that is who we see in ambulance in that cohort. We see older adults choking. And the statistics of deaths from kids choking versus adults choking, that adults outweigh the kids like tenfold.
Okay, all right. We're the vulnerable ones here, which I think is both terrifying for us, but also really reassuring.
Chew your prosciutto is the takeaway.
Do you know what? Maybe it's a genetic thing because if ever my children love prosciutto and ham, but my children have gagged and vomited up prosciutto, like, because we don't know how to pace ourselves. And I'm like, oh, this is stringy and chewy. And so anyone listening, maybe avoid the prosciutto as a first food, or even at the age of 36. But I do know that quick sense of panic, and I was able to rationalize it versus a baby or a child that's just like, oh my goodness, something is wrong here. Can I ask a question? When we're starting solids, because just hearing you talk about how then you need to get them out of the high chair, is there a sort of gold standard of how the high chair should be set up? Should we have a footstool that I sometimes see? And just thinking about that scenario you gave, a lot of high chairs come with a clip-in strap. And I'm trying to think back as to, sometimes I did it because I had climbers and sometimes I didn't just because I didn't. But is that an obstacle to like a quick evacuation in a choking scenario?
That's a really good question. It's something where like I get asked all the time about like, do I strap them in because they could fall out, or do I not strap them in because it's going to be faster to get them out if they were having a choking episode? And like
Yeah.
looking at the statistics and personally like what I've seen, I have never been to a child who has legitimately been choking when since I've been nearly 9 years as a paramedic, but I have been to
Yep.
many children who have stood up in their high chair or they've tipped their high chair and they've fallen
fallen.
out and had a head injury. So you weigh up risk versus benefit. There's a risk that they
Yeah.
might fall out of the high chair if you were to go and grab something from the fridge, or you're going to grab a face washer because they've smeared
Yep.
food all over their face. Whatever time that you're not right there and watching them is a risk for them to fall out of that high chair. Whereas choking, like as long as you can get those straps off easily, it's not something that's like they're all twisted and it's like a maze for you to get off. As long as you can, get those straps off quite quickly and grab them up out of the high chair, that's going to realistically take you no longer than 15 seconds. So always strap them in is the biggest takeaway from that.
Totally.
Yeah. Because kids fall out of high chairs all the time.
Good. I'll pretend like I didn't say that I sometimes didn't.
No judgment. No judgment. You
Do
all
as
do
we
what you
say,
gotta do.
not as Sally did. Okay, amazing. And in terms of chair?
Yeah. So with chair, yeah, it's also a really important one as well. So I had one of the IKEA high chairs, just like the plastic one, the generic one.
That's what I
everyone's got.
started with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it. Easy to clean, like just easy to pack down and take away on the weekend, all those sorts of things. The only addition that you'd have to add to it is a footrest. So we really want kids' feet supported when they are starting solids, because you think about how difficult it is if you're out for dinner and you're sitting on a bar stool, for example, and your legs are dangling and you don't have a footrest. You're sort of like doing this the whole time, like trying to balance yourself. So you think about a baby who is new to eating, they're new to like moving food around in their mouth, they're trying to concentrate on breaking food down really well. We don't want them to be trying to balance themselves at the same time, because it's obviously going to take the focus away from what's in their mouth and what they're chewing on, all those sorts of things, and the food in front of them, because they're trying to balance at the same time. Footrest just takes that out of the equation.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah, it's a really big
The
one.
sitting on the bar stool.
Oh, it annoys me as soon as
even
there's no
find
footrest.
it annoys me, but I love sitting at the bar. I love the experience, but can you give me somewhere to put my feet? But this is like first world problem, but even somewhere where I used to go and get my nails done, we used to sit up at the bar, and I actually had to be that person that was like, I have a bad back, can I sit in a proper chair? Because I would feel discombobulated and I'm so uncomfortable for that whole time. So I'd never thought about it like that in terms of a high chair without the foot stand. We ended up moving to the Trip Trap, which I know is so popular. The only downside is they're expensive. They're an investment.
Yeah, they are an investment. A great investment because it grows with your child, but there's lots of different brands that do very similar ones. But 90 degrees, just think like back in a 90 degrees against a chair, bum in a 90 degrees, knees, and then their feet on footrest, 90 degrees.
Okay, that's an easy formula, and strapped in. My children, my 6-year-old and 4-year-old, are still in their seat.
Strapped in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's one takeaway from today, it is strap them in.
Definitely.
So then when you talk about how babies, and I think this is just the thing that really needs to be reiterated from a confidence perspective, is that babies are not the most common age group for choking. When does that, and yes, we are, but when does that sort of change in terms of baby to toddlerhood to childhood? When do we start to see choking may actually become a little bit more of a concern?
The toddler age group. Like I have a nearly 3-year-old little boy who just rules my life. He is the dominant one in our household.
Yeah.
And like I talk about like all the time, I have 2 hard and fast rules as being a paramedic and a mum.
Okay.
And one of those rules is they must always be sitting down to eat their food.
Yeah.
The reason why we see more adults have choking episodes is because you see people like eating their breakfast and they're running for trains, or, we go out for dinner and we're like trying to talk and socialize and laugh with mouthful of food. Like it's all increasing the risk of that food going down into that wrong hole, down into their airway. So you think about with kids,
that was literally me with my prosciutto. I was standing, chatting with an Aperol Spritz, and I needed your hard and fast rule there, Eliza.
Yeah. It's like something that is so hard to do. And like, I'm not naive to that fact. Like I said, I have a toddler. Like he wants to walk around with food in his mouth all the time. Like, or he wants to go and play with his toys because that's far more exciting than sitting at the dinner table and eating his food.
Yeah.
But I just made it a rule from when we started solids, and we still do it every time. Now, if he wants to leave the table, I say, food stays at the table, buddy. Are you all done? Like, we're not walking around, we're eating our food. You sit here to eat your food, and if you're done, then the food stays here and you go and play. That's totally fine. Because that's where I really get like really nervous is toddlers that we see like running around with food in their mouth, or you go to the park and you see like kids with a mouthful of food and they're trying to climb on equipment, or crawling around with food in their mouth, or laying down with food in their mouth. They're all just increasing the risk of having a choking episode. And that's just what we're trying to avoid. And so I say, if you just make this a hard and fast rule in the beginning when you start solids, and they must always be sitting down, then that'll hopefully stay with them for life. That every time, you know, you're not around to control the situation, if they're at a birthday party, they're at a park with friends and you're not there, if there's food on offer, they'll take a piece of food, they'll go and sit down and eat it, and then they'll go off and play.
And I do find that childcare, if anyone listening and their baby or toddler ends up going to childcare or kinder, they actually, at least in my experience, they have always doubled down on that rule. So it's usually followed through, or it's being reinforced there as well.
Totally. Yeah, they all sit down to eat whatever meal they're having, which is so good. Like, I'd be so uncomfortable if they were letting kids walk around, and they don't.
No. Okay, so if that's your first hard and fast rule, what's the second one from being a paramedic and a mum?
Helmets all the time.
Oh,
If it's got wheels, they need to have helmets on. It's not them like, you know, it doesn't matter how good they are at riding their bike or riding their scooter and they don't fall off. It's not them I'm concerned about. It's people losing control on the roads, people reversing out of driveways, all those sorts of things. Yeah. And also you need to mimic that. Both of those behaviors, like you need to sit down to eat your food, and that's like, you know, that comes back to having family meal times. Eat with them as much as possible, all sit down at the table together and do that, rather than you telling them to sit down at the table and you're like walking around the kitchen trying to like eat your dinner at the same time. But also with helmets as well, like if you're going for a bike ride or whatever, always wear your helmet.
Not that this is about the safe introduction of solids, but I grew up with a father as a trauma surgeon, and the amount of times we almost had to role play, like if the coolest boy invites you to go on the back of his motorbike, what are you going to say? And then I worked a few shifts overnight on the trauma ward, and we had so many helmetless accidents come in that at 1 a.m. I messaged my husband being like, oh, our children, like, we were already very good with helmets, but once you see it, it's a game changer. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I approve.
They save lives. They save lives, and they save from serious head injuries. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
One of my other rules is I go through every party bag now that I've got older children to take out any bouncy balls. I personally get nervous from around toddlers, and bouncy balls and choking risk there because they're often fun, novel, and just the wrong size.
The thing that I try and like remind parents of is that we can choke on anything. Like it doesn't have to be circular, hard, like whatever. We can put anything in our mouths and choke. Like, and kids can do the exact same thing.
Prosciutto.
Exactly. Like what's circle and hard about prosciutto? Nothing. You know?
Long and stringy.
That's exactly right. Stringy is sometimes a concern too. Things like that. There's obviously things that we just make, you know, take a lot more care in, and like communicating that like this is a lot, you know, this is a little bit dangerous. If you're going to play with this, don't put it in your mouth.
Yeah. And I think every family will have different rules and thresholds of what is and isn't sort of allowed and tolerated, and you and I come from these things with a very different perspective. I guess then let's say a parent is concerned that baby in their high chair is having a choking episode, whether it's partial or a full obstruction. What and you know, you don't need to go into the full-blown first aid, but what would be the first sort of initial steps that if mum or dad thinks, or grandparent or whoever it is with the baby thinks, I think my baby might be choking, what is the next step after getting them out of the high chair?
It does depend on whether they are able to cough well or not, because if they can cough well, the only thing you're going to do is sit there with them, call the ambulance, put it on speakerphone, because we don't know which way this is going to go, whether they're going to resolve it on their own or if it's going to turn in a full-blown complete obstruction where we need to start giving them some first aid. So we'd rather the ambulance be on the way there. But yeah, if they're coughing really well, the only thing you're going to do is just encourage them to keep coughing. Because like I said, anything that goes down into that airway and your body is able to cough, that's the best way the body is trying to protect itself from a choking episode getting any worse, but also from clearing it out. So encourage them to cough, stay really, really calm, cough along with them to mimic that they're doing all the right things, keep coughing, all those sorts of things. Just listening out.
Don't try and get it out.
Don't try and get it out unless it's something that's stuck or it's something that, like you said, was stringy that they're not actually able to cough out. Like something like a sticker, for example. Stickers are like a really big choking thing for young babies specifically. Especially if you've got...
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about a sticker.
Yeah, especially if you've got older toddlers and they've got stickers lying around everywhere. I know that I have heaps of them, and that's something I'm thinking about having another baby, is that these stickers...
And decorating the baby. Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but that's a really good point.
Oh, my second baby got tutus, accessories, and definitely got decorated with stickers.
Bedazzled.
Oh, bedazzled, yes. He lives for it.
Oh, I love that. Well, we're in a big sticker era, so I can totally see that. This poor baby is going to be bedazzled.
They're indoctrinated into the family with a sticker.
Exactly. But it's definitely something I've been thinking a lot about because stickers, they get stuck. So something like that, if they were choking on a sticker, for example, it is going to be very hard to cough that out. And it's also, if it was a complete obstruction where it's blocking all the flow of air, it's going to be very hard to clear that with back blows and chest thrusts because it's going to be stuck to the side of the airway. It's going to be really, really hard. So that would be the only time, if you could see where it was, you could try and put your fingers in and scoop it out to the front of their mouth. But otherwise, we just say no fingers in their mouth. If they're coughing, let them cough, encourage them to cough, keep coughing along with them. If they're not able to cough well or not at all.
I imagine the risk is you accidentally push it further and it ends up becoming worse.
Totally, yeah.
And then let's say you think it might be more of a complete obstruction. I mean, the ambulance is being called anyway, and then you start your first aid.
Yeah. And, most parents don't think to just pick up their phone if they see their child choking and dial the ambulance. So if you hadn't already, that's okay. Pick up your child because statistically, if you do these maneuvers really, really well, they're going to work. That's why we don't see deaths from kids from choking episodes because these maneuvers work really, really well. And often by parents. Yep. Most of the time, parents will clear out their child's airway by doing first aid before they've even called the ambulance. And that's why we just don't really see kids choking in ambulance very commonly at all.
Yeah.
Because parents know what to do. Yep. They've already done it before they've needed the ambulance.
If you're finding this helpful, make sure you're subscribed to Nap Trapped. New episodes drop every week and we cover everything from sleep regressions to daycare naps to night weaning. Head to naptrappedpodcast.com to subscribe and grab our free sleep resources while you're there. You'll also find our full episode library so you can search by your baby's age or the specific issue you're dealing with. My next two questions before we get on to allergens, because I think that's a really important topic that we cover, is grapes. I am still inclined to cut a grape, and marshmallows. Those were my two sort of hang-ups with younger baby or younger toddlers, and even now still. Do you have sort of guidelines of when we should be cutting grapes and until when?
Till they're 21. No, I'm
I was going to say, I'm pro, being in your cot until you go off to university, and I'm going to cut your grapes on the first day of university still.
And then when you go and get married one day, if you decide that's what you want to do, I'm also going to encourage your partner to cut up your grapes too.
Yeah, and I'll tuck you into your trip trap in your wedding dress or your suit. Yeah, safety first, dear. With a helmet on.
Yeah. This is such a common question that is commonly asked, and I feel like grapes and marshmallows are just made out to be like the devil food that they're so unsafe for kids. They can't have them because if your child has a grape in its whole form, they're going to choke and something's awful is going to happen to them. I look at it with a very different lens, coming back to the point that we can choke on anything at all, even though, it's the perfect shape or size, it's hard, it's it's round, that if it did go down into that airway, it would block the complete flow of the air from there. But also the biggest thing that you need to remember is that when we start solids, we're doing all these things to try and set kids up for a lifetime of safe eating. So I personally, my son's nearly 3 and I don't cut his grapes up anymore and he has marshmallows. But that is also come from a lot of work of, whenever I got to the point where I felt comfortable with, I don't want to say particular ages because I don't want any parent to think that that's the age that they should start doing it and whatever. It's going to be totally dependent on your child and how much of a good, strong chewer they are and how confident and comfortable you feel with the idea.
And I guess your comfort level.
Totally. Yeah. And I, if we're having grapes together, we sit there together and I show him, like, I bite off a piece and then I say, we do big chews with this one and, and then we take another bite and we chew it. Because same thing with marshmallows. Like, if you're constantly taking that marshmallow away from a baby chino, what are they going to do when they go out and get a baby chino with a grandparent or a babysitter or whoever it is? And they might not know that your thing is that you take away that marshmallow and you eat it, or they're just not allowed to have it because it's, increasing the risk of them having a choking episode. And they're given a marshmallow and they put the whole thing in their mouth because they know they're not normally allowed to have it, but they don't know how to eat it safely because they've never had the experience with it.
Yeah, it's practice, isn't it?
It's practice. It's like letting go of, the fear around it, and also like setting them up for safe eating and creating those muscles to be able to break things down. So with marshmallows, when I got to the age where I was comfortable with my son, I would just tear off little pieces of that marshmallow and give it to him. I wouldn't let him put the whole marshmallow into his mouth. And now I just say, like, we do really big chews with this one, and he'll just bite off little pieces of the marshmallow and chew them up, swallow it, and keep going. Same thing with grapes, because I always come back to the idea of what are they going to do at a birthday party if there's a plate full of grapes or there's a plate full of marshmallows and you're not there to constantly take it away or go and cut them up, They're going to see that food that they're not always allowed to have.
Yeah, us last weekend, my second tagged along to a prep birthday party, and I turned around but I was very proud. He'd taken himself to a bench and he was sitting and he had a plate of strawberries, so not grapes, but strawberries and marshmallows.
There you go. But they sat down to eat them. That's what you want. Because you think about, like, if this same child that was never allowed, marshmallows, or because they were, constantly taken away from them, they're going to stuff like 4 marshmallows in their mouth and then they're going to run away and hide to try and eat them because they know they're not meant to have them.
Yes, exactly. So it's exposure. And I think we also need to remember that all of the early work with solids is actually building up the strength to chew, to move their tongue around, and to encourage that gag reflex, so that as they get older, they've been exposed to all of these trickier textures and sizes and shapes.
Totally. And just don't get stuck in the headspace of thinking that grapes and marshmallows are the devil and they cause choking episodes, because we can choke on absolutely anything. Prosciutto.
Yeah, prosciutto. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about allergies, because as you said, that's sort of the second big scary idea for families when they start introducing solids. What do families listening need to know about allergies and the introduction of solids?
Yeah, another really scary thing for parents, because it's this big overwhelming thing that you have to do this thing, and it's seen as like, because you have to do it and you have to do it really slowly and introduce each allergen, it sort of makes you a little bit nervous that you're waiting for something bad to happen by doing a really slow and gradual introduction of each allergen. But I just try and look at it through the viewpoint of it's something positive you're trying to do for them. You're trying to introduce allergens really slowly. You're trying to do it really, really early, because you're trying to test your immune system to see, are you okay with this allergen or do you not like it? If you don't like it, that's cool. Show me that you don't like it, and then we're going to avoid that allergen to not make them have an allergic reaction. But the other way that we try and do it, and why we do it really slowly and we do it gradually, is to try and see if the immune system is comfortable with that food. If it is, we keep on increasing the amount we're giving them. It keeps tolerating it. Cool, we've ticked off that allergen, then we go on to the next one until we get through them all. So it's that really scary thing that, something could happen. They could have an allergic reaction from whatever allergen it is you're introducing them to. Statistically unlikely. Only 1 in 10 kids have allergic reactions or allergies. So it's, the odds are in your favor when you go in and introduce your allergens, sorry. But thinking about it that it's something positive that you're actually trying to do for them.
I think, you know, how you were saying before that introducing solids and the risk of choking just wasn't a huge fear for you because of what you've seen as a paramedic. I think the allergen aspect for me as a nurse wasn't a big deal because I knew that the chances of a full-blown anaphylactic reaction with the first, you know, whiff of peanut butter was not going to happen, that I would be given signs and signals that then I could intervene and outsource, you know, medical advice and appointments and whatnot. I didn't have that fear that this could be a catastrophe on day one. And you do see those videos, and I completely understand, of parents sitting in the hospital car parks as they go to give, you know, the first little bit of a prawn or of peanut butter. I completely understand. But is that accurate from your experience that the chances of it being a really severe, full-blown anaphylactic, life-threatening allergic reaction on the very first exposure is not really going to happen?
No, not at all. Like the anaphylaxis episodes that I've seen in the last couple of years have been from kids who know they have anaphylaxis to something, and it's been from an accidental exposure. So the most recent one I did was a little one who was given a cookie and it said that it had no nuts in it, but then someone just completely brain blanked and it was made with almond meal. So that was like, and they were anaphylactic to all nuts. So they had an anaphylactic reaction to it. So it's usually from accidental exposures when we're seeing little ones out on the road. We very, very rarely see anaphylaxis from young babies that are being introduced to allergens. We get a lot of calls for your mild to moderate allergic reactions because parents aren't sure what's going on here. Is this something that's really dangerous for them? They've just come out in a full body rash or they've swelled up in their face and they call the ambulance because it's terrifying. Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's an appropriate response, right, for a parent to see that and to call an ambulance.
Yeah, it is. Like, it's totally justified because it's terrifying, but we can't do too much for that. Like, we take them off to the hospital. They're, you know, given some medication and then they're given a referral back to their GP to go off and see an allergen specialist to go and have allergen testing done. So, you know, and this is something I talk about in workshops and my online solids course, is that you can manage mild, moderate allergic reactions at home and with a trip off to the GP. It doesn't need to go to the emergency department. It doesn't need an ambulance, but if that's what you feel most comfortable doing, totally fine. But nothing we carry on the ambulance treats those sorts of things.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's about knowledge, isn't it? So doing something like your introduction to solids course, knowing what to look for so that then if something does happen, you can actually determine, is this mild, moderate or severe, what intervention is necessary, rather than feeling completely lost, overwhelmed and scared.
If, like, you know, you introduce an allergen and your baby comes out in a rash around their face, you're going to be like, oh, that's not good, but I know this is not going to harm you really dangerously very fast. So, like, I know that this is okay and we can manage this, and we need to see the GP and we need to not have that allergen again, totally fine, but I know that this is not going to kill you. It's the same thing with gagging, like knowing what gagging looks like and knowing that it's not choking and what you need to do to, like, sit through a gagging episode and try and make them feel comfortable through that. It all comes down to knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same with baby sleep. Knowledge is power. One of the things that I have seen you talk about, and I wish I'd known about this when my babies were first starting with nuts. And luckily, my children don't have any allergies, and we love peanut butter. So I think I would have felt lost if a child had had an allergy. But you use a nut dust. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you explain that? Because I think it's genius,
dust.
and I wish I'd known about it when I was doing solids.
Yeah, so the Scoop and Ways at Coles or Woolies, I went, like, when we first introduced nuts, and I got each individual nut into a little bag. I came home, I blitzed them up individually, labeled them what they were. So I had cashews, I had hazelnuts, I had pistachios, all the different things. And when I did each nut, I put this little bit of nut dust each day onto something my son was already eating. Like I'd mix it into sweet potato or avocado or oats, whatever it was, until I ticked off all of those nuts. And once I ticked off each of the nuts, I then combined it together into this nut dust, which I still make now all the time. You'll see me at the scoop and weigh with all the
Yeah,
nuts.
I mean, I should add it to porridge
Yeah,
tomorrow.
that's what I do. I just add it, like a tablespoon of it each morning into my son's breakfast, or on toast I'll pop like butter and then I'll just sprinkle over the nut dust on top of it, just so that I know that he's constantly getting up those exposures to all of the nuts. Because that's the most important thing. Once you introduce an allergen and you do it when they're young and you tick it off, you want to make sure that that allergen stays in their diet frequently, because the immune system is a wild and wonderful thing.
That was going to be my next question. So it's not a matter of like, okay, tick, you've had peanut butter, you're fine, I'll try again in 6 months. It's you need to keep up the exposure.
Yeah, if it's something that your family, they're going to be exposed to, or some in your family, like it's something in your family's diet, then you want to keep up those regular exposures, because the immune system can just decide randomly one day that, oh, I don't know what you are, I don't like you anymore, and now I'm allergic to you, which has happened to me recently with kiwi fruit.
I'm allergic to kiwi. What happens to you with kiwi fruit? I'm allergic to kiwi fruit.
This only happened to me like a couple of months ago. I haven't tested it since, but I have eaten kiwi fruits my whole life. I love kiwi fruit. And I cut up my son ate kiwi, and then I had a piece of it, and instantly my lips were all tingly. They started swelling. Where I touched the kiwi, all of my hands was all really itchy, went really red into a rash. Like, it was just so bizarre. And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense with the theory of keeping it in your diet constantly to reduce the likelihood of you developing an allergic reaction to it. The immune system, it is wild.
Can we talk briefly about grandparents, other caregivers, babysitters? How can we get everyone on the same page? How do we talk about introduction of food in general, getting caught up on what's the word? First aid. I should know that off the tip of my tongue. How do we get everyone on board so that you don't have those moments? And I think particularly coming into Christmas, that's where my brain always goes to, is that people, and food is a love language, whereas people are saying, oh, try this, or feed us. And how do we manage that? Because they could easily either not know the rules or try and flex the rules a little bit. Have you got any advice for parents listening thinking, oh, we've got 10 Christmas get-togethers and we're doing one thing over here, and I just know the grandparents. I remember turning around and my dad was giving my exclusively breastfed baby who just started solids a little bit of icing from a cupcake. And I knew it was all in fun, but I was like, oh my God, that's my baby. It's tough. Boundaries.
It is, yeah. Boundaries, yeah, very hard to hold at things like Christmases, where it's all just full of joy and everyone is so excited to hold your baby, and they know that they're eating food now, so you're going to get lots of fingers in the mouth. Yeah, with grandparents especially, I'll start and talk about I had a workshop recently where a grandparent, they were a new grandparent, and they said to me what from a safety perspective is your thoughts on this baby-led weaning thing? Thinking that I would say that it's really unsafe, it causes choking all the time, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, when we talked a lot about the positives and how it doesn't increase the risk of choking, and it's not dangerous for babies to have big chunks of food in their mouth, all those sorts of things, they sort of started to understand once we unraveled it a lot that, if you do it safely, it doesn't increase the risk of choking at all. But obviously this is a massive generational thing. Our parents came from a time when all baby food was pureed, and they didn't introduce things like peanut butter until the child was 2 or 3, because they thought the earlier you did it, the more likely you are to, cause them to have an allergic reaction. So it's also relearning for them, and it's probably not unlikely that your mother-in-law, whoever it is that's going to be around feeding your baby is going to feel really uncomfortable seeing them chew on a piece of steak or, put a big chunk of food in their mouth. That's going to be really, really hard for them. And also it's going to be really hard for them to recognize that they're having a gag episode, they're not choking, and they're going to want to straight away put their fingers in their mouth or try and pick them up because they think that they're choking. So that's as well, I say, everyone in your baby's life, get them to do a first aid workshop, do it all together just so everyone is on board, everyone is across everything. Approaching things like Christmas, I just had another hard and fast rule. I'm saying I've got 3 now.
Yeah, love it.
But when we go to like family things, I just like said when my son was really young, before he was at the, if solids is a new thing or you're just taking it really
Yeah.
slow, like just let everyone know, because if everyone knows that there's a boundary there, then nobody's going to feel that uncomfortable feeling if anything was to happen that, they're getting blamed or anything
Yeah.
like that. So I would just always say like, hey, if anyone wants to feed Sully food, can you just ask me or Ben first? Like, and then it was like, oh, can Sully have a bit of this? And I'd say like, no, my 7-month-old cannot have a full piece of whatever it was. Whatever it was. I can't even think of an example.
Yeah.
Christmas ham. They can't have a full piece of Christmas ham.
I tell you, it's always the ham.
The ham will get you.
The ham will get you. I'm just thinking about the traditional Australian Christmas. So sorry to any of our listeners outside of Australia, but prawns are often included, and that is obviously shellfish
An
is
allergen.
an allergen. What is a great way for a baby to be exposed to shellfish, which may not be on the menu all the time? I started with dumplings, and I just sort of used the filling rather of the dumpling as a exposure. But how do you usually recommend families do that?
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. That's how I did it as well, was through
Phew.
through prawn dumplings. You just got to make sure that they're okay with wheat and soy, because lots of dumplings also contain wheat and soy. So just making sure that they're all fine with those. You can do like shredded up prawn meat. Prawns are like the trickier one to do. The shellfish is the trickier one to do. So I left that one to the last allergen to do. And I think by that stage, my son was nearly like 8 months by then. So he was able to pick up little pieces of food. So I just also did shredded prawn meat that he was able to pick up and do it himself. But for a younger baby, like you could give them a prawn to suck on, like once you've exposed them to it. And, very unlikely that they're going to chew much of the actual prawn meat off, but they're just still getting an exposure to it.
I was going to say, because you get an exposure just from it touching your tongue and
inside of the
lips.
mouth. Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
Ideally, we want them to be ingesting it, to be eating it. But it's the same thing with like peanut butter, for example, or any of your nut butters. If you're really terrified to introduce your nuts, we don't want to ever rub it on kids' skin on the outside of their body. But you can like grab a little piece of the allergen, say peanut butter, for example, and do like a swatch on the inside of their lip. And then you'd wait 15 minutes and see if they develop an allergic reaction from there, because it still counts as an exposure. Yeah, shredded prawn meat or a prawn dumpling was the easiest way to do it. But again, with like setting those boundaries at things like Christmas time, because nobody knows what textures your baby is going to be okay with, where they're at with starting solids, and also what allergens you've ticked off.
And also just what your family preferences are.
Totally. Yeah.
Maybe not icing off a cupcake.
That was like, that would have been I would have been like, oh, because we just tried to avoid like doing really sugary things in that first year, because I was like, he's got his whole life to eat crap.
Totally. I felt like that with the first baby, and second baby, I'm like, whatever. Like, he's a marshmallow probably way, years before my first baby even saw one. The things you learn as you go, as you have more babies. We try. You also touched on something which I can't believe I didn't ask as like the very first question, which is the old baby-led weaning versus purees. I feel like online there's so much, everyone's got their boxing gloves out. What is the truth? I did a hybrid. I loved purees, and I also gave them things to suck on and chew on. And is there a gold standard? Is one better than the other?
That's the gold standard, doing a mixture of both. It's called responsive feeding, and essentially like your baby's going to just like, you nailed it without even knowing.
Great. They can't bring that up in therapy in 15 years of like the things their mother did.
But yeah, that's like the best way to do it, because ultimately like your child is a human. They're going to decide how they want to be fed. Like you can try and give a baby purees if they're just smearing it all over their face or they're throwing it on the floor. They're not interested. It doesn't mean they don't like the food and they don't want his solids. It might actually be a texture thing, or they don't want to be spoon-fed. But the minute you give them something for them to pick up themselves and feed themselves, they might be much more interested in solids. So there's no right or wrong. Experiment with both. Like start wherever you feel most comfortable. If you're you've got a really big fear of them biting off a chunk of food and having it in their mouth, then, starting with baby-led weaning or finger foods is probably not ideal for you because you're just going to be terrified through that whole process. So start where it feels comfortable, and then you just slowly add in more textures, things that are more tricky, things that, they actually need to be able to move around and break down in their mouth to teach them those muscles that they need for chewing.
I also did it because, again, talking about feeders, I thought, there was so much fluffing around with just baby-led weaning. I was like, could you actually swallow something and have some sort of caloric intake?
Yes.
Yeah. And have a nice full tummy. And it's great because you're distracted and that'd be like, bang, here's the spoon. And I just found that there was a happy medium in that hybrid. So, okay, great. I passed that test. Your hope and my hope always is that parents understand the why, and also to feel confident and empowered about all of these milestones that we all end up going through. And we all have the same fears on varying scales, and it doesn't have to be scary. In fact, I think it's really exciting because all of a sudden you have a new family member up at the family dinner table eating, and again, like, food is a love language, at least in my family. So it's like, okay, we get to go and try these new things. I heard my 6-year-old the other day, we were at a family yum cha, wave over the lady and say, could I please have another round of xiaolong bao? And I was like, my heart is so proud.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's probably the throwback to the dumpling filling that I gave her at 6 months of age.
That is iconic. There's no more desire that you'd want from a parent. Mine at the moment is my son will get in the car and he'll be like, Mummy, listen to No Broke Boys.
My son's is Talk to Me, the Olivia Dean song. Talk to me, talk to me.
That is so
He'll do
funny.
that. And then tell me which line I need to do.
I'm like, I don't know whether to be proud or ashamed that I've done this.
I know. Luckily, it's all over their head, the actual context and understanding. I guess before or as we wrap up, where do families, if they're listening to this and they're thinking, okay, this sounds great, how can I learn more? I want to figure out what foods I should start with. What does it look like to do baby-led weaning? How can I feel safe in my first aid skills? How can I get everyone on the same page? Where can families go for resources to feel even more confident and empowered about starting this process?
Totally. So it depends on whether you want to learn in person or online, but I've got a online starting solids course that's 75 minutes long. It was created with 2 incredible pediatric dietitians. They cover all the nutrition components to do with starting solids, and I cover all the safety components. So your choking, your gagging, your allergens, all those sorts of things. That's a 75-minute thing that can be done by grandparents. That can be done by parents. It's online, accessible anytime.
Perfect.
And then I run
during nap time.
First aid. Nap time, 75 minutes. That's a good nap.
Yeah, that's a damn good nap, yeah.
And then I do private first aid workshops. So these are like the most popular one. They're based in Melbourne, where families will book in for me to come to their house. They'll get all their family together, their friends together, parents group, whatever it might be, all together, and then they'll learn all of the things to do with first aid all in that one workshop. It usually runs for about 3 hours. And we cover like everything to do with starting solids in that workshop as well.
And I think it's so important because even as a nurse, and I've done all the basic life-saving skills, but also the more advanced in the hospital setting, it's knowing what to do in the home with your own child and having refreshers. And I often see, and I think it's so great, families doing it even whilst pregnant and getting the in-laws and the grandparents to come along so that you start from a really confident place. And then if you want to do a refresher closer to introducing solids, or then when you get into those toddlers putting everything in their mouth, you do another refresher, because you can never feel too equipped.
Totally. Yeah. It's like such an important thing that you should do at so many different stages in life. Like, and if you've done, if you're a teacher or whatever, you've done a first aid workshop to do with work, don't think that I don't need to do one of them because I've already done it to do with work. You will get so much more value out of doing a private first aid workshop that is like baby or child specific outside of a workplace, because they don't cover things to do with fevers and febrile convulsions and croup and things, random, just obscure things that are actually quite common for kids to experience.
All the things we could do 5 more podcast episodes all about.
Exactly.
Yeah, the list goes on. The list goes on. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just know that our Nap Trap listeners are going to take so much value out of this, and no more fear around starting solids.
No, all fun.
Excellent. And I will put all of Eliza's details and her courses in the show notes and in our subscriber newsletter. And definitely go and follow her over on Instagram as well, because honestly, as I said at the very beginning, I have reached out to you multiple times, particularly around steak. And you are a wealth of knowledge, obviously. So thank you so much. And Nap Trappers, we will see you on the next episode of Nap Trapped. And I hope you're enjoying this little mini series of Meeting the Village. All right. Thanks, Eliza.
Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Bye.